Call of Duty 2 is the second main installment in the Call of Duty series. Developed by Infinity Ward and published by Activision, it was released on October 25th, 2005 for Windows PC, and about a month later for the Xbox 360 as a launch title, on November 22nd, 2005. In 2006, it would also make its way to the Mac and even onto mobile devices. However, the mobile version seems to be drastically different, and I wouldn't consider it to be part of the main Call of Duty series. I had recently beaten the game on PC, but for this review, I will be playing the Xbox 360 version on my Xbox One X. Also, I'm playing on regular difficulty, as I think all Call of Duty games are meant to be played on this difficulty for maximum enjoyment. I find the other difficulties to be too easy or frustratingly difficult. However, I have beaten the game on all difficulties before. If you are playing this game for the first time, I do recommend regular difficulty. If you're absolutely new to gaming, then I recommend easy. Hardened is if you want more of a challenge, and veteran is just annoying. Anyways, on to the review. The graphics have held up surprisingly well considering this game came out in 2005. Some models and textures do look a bit dated, but the game is still pleasing to the eye. The gun and character models still look good, and even more graphically complex assets such as water, fire, and smoke still look great. The character animations can also look dated at times, but it's not a big deal. The guns each have their own distinct sounds, and you can tell which firearm is being shot without even having to look at it, which I think is really cool. The grenades and other explosions sound beefy, and vehicles make realistic rumbling noises, especially the tanks. The music in the game is nothing spectacular, but it does the job, and although I won't be listening to the soundtrack outside the game, I think it suits the World War II setting perfectly. When combined, the graphics, sounds, and music create an amazing atmosphere, and each campaign has its own unique vibe. The Soviet campaign takes place in winter. Everything is covered in frost, there's snow falling, some German soldiers have face coverings to protect themselves from the brutal Russian winter, and you get the sense that it's absolutely freezing out there. On the other hand, the British campaign is the complete opposite. You fight in the desert where it's always sunny, hot, and dry. Everyone is wearing shorts and hats that protect them from the heat rather than the cold. And then there's the American campaign, where the sky is always overcast and it often rains, making the environment feel dirty, cold, and wet. The only sunny level in the American campaign is the last one, which I think is fitting, as if to say, finally, the war is over. There are also minor details that I greatly appreciate. For example, each country has its own type of grenade, and depending on which grenade you pick up, that's the one you will throw. If you have 2 American grenades and you pick up 2 German grenades, the game knows which grenades you have in your satchel, and you will throw 2 American grenades and 2 German grenades. Another thing I found to be really cool was the inclusion of female soldiers on the Eastern Front. Historically, there were a lot of Russian women who fought in World War II, and it's just really cool to see that developers went and made an entirely new character model just to include in a couple levels of the Soviet campaign. It wasn't necessary, but greatly appreciated. When you die, there are historical quotes that appear on screen, and before every level, you can read a diary while the level loads, which gives your character some personality and lets you know what he's thinking about the situation he's in. Also, before certain missions, there will be short video clips from a military channel World War II documentary, which gives the game a sense of realism. Like, what you are doing in-game happened in real life as well. It's educational without being boring, which is always good. Overall, for presentation, I give Call of Duty 2 a 3 out of 3. First of all, I absolutely love that there are no cutscenes in Call of Duty 2. You read the diary, sometimes watch a short documentary clip, and then you play the level from beginning to end. No cutscenes, no QuickTime events, just pure gameplay. You are in control of your own story. Also, the loading times are extremely fast, especially on the Xbox One X. When you die, you respawn instantly without any loading at all. It's great. However, the gameplay is where most of my criticism lies. I understand that Call of Duty 2 is an old game, but some of the gameplay mechanics haven't aged well and can be a bit frustrating. The biggest complaint I have is not being able to sprint. I would be okay without being able to sprint if my character would move faster, but he moves so slowly. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking while crouched because of how slow he moves. I will often press the crouch button to stand back up, but it turns out I was standing the whole time after all. There are sequences in the game where you must charge across a field or up a hill with your comrades, but as soon as the charge starts, your allies take off running and you are left behind, slowly walking trying to catch up to them. Another complaint I have is the melee attack. Unlike modern Call of Duty games where you lock onto a target and lunge with a knife attack, in Call of Duty 2 there's no lock on, there's no lunge, and there's no knife. Instead you use the butt of your gun to beat the enemy to death. Sometimes it takes one hit, but most of the time it takes at least two. I actually like the buttstock attack, and I like that it takes multiple hits, especially in multiplayer, but it can be hard to execute. Sometimes you hit the melee button and there's an enemy right in front of you, but it doesn't register a hit. It kind of reminds me of the sniper rifle buttstock attack from GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. Also, I find it really hard to aim in this game, and the hip firing is terrible. To be fair, on PC, I can aim really well. It's only on console that I have a hard time hitting my target when aiming down sights. That could be just me though. Maybe I just suck at aiming. There's a part in the game where you can hide inside a bunker, but if you stay too long, the enemies will throw a bunch of grenades at you from a ridiculous distance and blow you up. It's kind of funny because I don't think there are actual enemy NPCs throwing the grenades, but the game itself is just programmed to throw grenades at you out of nowhere, so you have to come out and fight. That's not really a complaint, it's just something I found kind of interesting. So despite having some complaints, Call of Duty 2 is still very fun and plays really well. The grenades have massive area damage, which is great for clearing rooms and trenches. You will also get a lot of guns to choose from. You start every level with 2 guns, and then you can swap them out for any guns you find on the battlefield. Enemies and friendlies alike will drop weapons upon death, and there are also weapons scattered across the level for you to find. There are pistols, bolt-action rifles, semi-automatic rifles, machine guns, sniper rifles, and even rocket launchers. Surprisingly, there aren't any shotguns though, at least none that I could find, although there are some in multiplayer. For the most part, you will just run to your objectives marked on the compass and kill Nazis on the way there. Sometimes the objective is to kill more Nazis. Other times you'll have to defend a position, or blow up a vehicle, or signal an artillery strike. Objectives vary, and it doesn't get repetitive. There are even a couple levels where you get to drive a tank, which is a nice change of pace. Overall, I have a few minor complaints in regards to gameplay, but it's still very fun, and for the most part, it works as it should. I give Call of Duty 2 a 2 out of 3 for gameplay. The story in Call of Duty 2 is, well, World War II. You play as 4 different characters throughout 10 chapters, and there are between 1 and 4 levels per chapter. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 take place between 1941 and 1943. You play as Private Vasily Ivanovich Kozlov, who is part of the 13th Guards Rifle Division in the Soviet Red Army. These chapters all take place in Russia, near Moscow and in Stalingrad. The story here is that you defend the motherland and push back the invading German forces. Chapters 4, 6, and 8 take place between 1942 and 1944. You play as Sergeant John Davis, who is part of the British 7th Armored Division. These chapters take place in northern Egypt, central Tunisia, and in Normandy, France. Chapter 5 is the chapter where you get to drive a tank. It takes place in 1943 in northeastern Libya, and you play as British Commander David Welsh, also known as Fox 3. I think Fox 3 is the name of his tank. I believe he is also part of the British 7th Armored Division, alongside Sergeant John Davis, but I'm not exactly sure. I feel like it's the same campaign, it just changes perspectives between a soldier and a tank commander. So the story in these chapters is that you're liberating North Africa from occupying German forces, and then moving on to France to assist in the invasion of Normandy. Chapters 7, 9, and 10 take place in 1944 and 1945. You play as American Corporal Bill Taylor of the 2nd Ranger Battalion. These chapters take place in Normandy on D-Day, the Hirchen Forest in Germany, and Wallander, also in Germany. The story here is that you're liberating France and pushing the Germans back into Germany. First-person shooters aren't really known for their stories. Usually the game gives you a setting and a plot, and then it's up to you to create your own story. And Call of Duty 2 does this exceptionally well. It truly feels like you're a soldier fighting in World War II. For the story, Call of Duty 2 gets a 3 out of 3. Call of Duty 2 took me 5.5 hours to beat on regular difficulty, which I think is fine. I don't like overly long games, and I know everyone always complains about how short Call of Duty campaigns are, but I think they are the perfect length. Also, since I had just recently played the game on PC, I was kind of rushing through it this time around just to get the gameplay footage for the review. If you take your time and play as intended, or play on the higher difficulties, it could take upwards of 7 hours. That's about how long it took me to play the first time I played this game. So to give the game a score out of 10, I add a point on whether I would recommend the game for others to play, and for Call of Duty 2, that's definitely a yes. So the overall score for Call of Duty 2 is a 9 out of 10. This game is great. The first time I ever beat it was on a Mac in high school, and I loved it so much that I bought the game on my PC and Xbox 360 as well. Since then, I've beaten this game at least 7 times, probably more. When I first came across this game, I had already played and beaten World at War, the first Black Ops, Modern Warfare 1 and 2, and possibly Modern Warfare 3, although I'm not sure about that one. It doesn't really matter. The point is that I had played all the modern Call of Duty games up to that point, and I really didn't think I'd enjoyed the older games. But I was pleasantly surprised at how great they looked and played even compared to the newer titles. And because of how much I liked Call of Duty 2, I also ended up playing the other older titles as well. If you're a fan of first-person shooters, and especially if you're a fan of Call of Duty, you need to play Call of Duty 2. And I also recommend playing Call of Duty 1, United Offensive, and Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare. I also recommend playing on PC, as the gameplay and graphics are noticeably better than on console. However, if you don't have a PC, consoles work just fine. Playing these older titles gave me a huge appreciation for the series and its humble beginnings. I have great respect for the developers at Infinity Ward that made Call of Duty 2. You can tell they put so much time and effort into making this game. When the credits begin to roll, there's a cutscene that plays in the background that shows American troops rescuing Captain Price from German soldiers. They didn't need to put that into the game, they could have just cut to black and rolled the credits, but it was a really cool addition. And at the very end of the credits, the last words are, "No cows were harmed in the making of this game." It's such a minor detail, but it's funny to see at the end of the credits, and it made me smile. And if you played the whole game, you know why they wrote that. Just small little things that shows that these developers made a game and had fun doing it. It wasn't just about making a profit and pumping out yet another lame shooter. This was a work of art. And speaking of Captain Price, since I played Call of Duty 2 after I had played the Modern Warfare games, I thought it was so cool to see Captain Price in this game as well. I always thought maybe he's the grandfather of the Captain Price in Modern Warfare. They even look the same. Although the review is over, I still want to mention multiplayer. Call of Duty 2 does have multiplayer, which can be played through LAN, online, and split screen on console. However, it's clear that the developers were focused more on the single player experience rather than the multiplayer. Therefore, I'm not including multiplayer as part of the rating for the game. The real meat of the game is definitely the single player. The multiplayer is just a bonus, icing on the cake if you will. It's a nice addition and I'm definitely glad it's there, but without it, I don't think my opinion of the game would change. It's like with GoldenEye for the N64. I'm very glad there was a multiplayer mode in GoldenEye and I played a ton of it with my friends back in the day, but if it didn't exist, GoldenEye as a single player experience would still have been one of the greatest games on that console. So when I was in high school, my friends and I took a Mac computer class that turned out to be really boring. Very early on, we decided to try and find a free download for a Mac version of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare so we could play together during class. We couldn't find Modern Warfare, but we did stumble upon the Mac version of Call of Duty 2. It was better than nothing, so we all downloaded it, and for the rest of the year, that's all we played. We had a blast playing against each other, and eventually about half the class ended up downloading the game and playing with us. Since then, I have tried playing online on both PC and Xbox 360, but the online multiplayer doesn't keep me entertained for long. I can play a few matches, but I get bored fairly quickly. The later Call of Duty games are much more entertaining when playing online. However, playing locally with friends is very fun, and we still play once in a while when we all get together. There are 5 game modes: Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, Headquarters, and Search and Destroy. There are also quite a few maps to choose from, and some of them are really good maps. I'm surprised Call of Duty didn't bring back some of these maps to the newer games. Some of my favorites were Belta, Leningrad, Matmata, Moscow, and Tuzhane. There are even DLC maps, which I did end up buying for the 360, although I haven't played much on those. One thing I really like about multiplayer in Call of Duty 2 is that you have to use weapons depending on which faction you play as. If you play as Russians, you have to use Russian weapons, Germans have to use German weapons, and so on, unless you pick them up off of dead enemies. My favorite faction is definitely the Russians, with Germans being a close second. I just feel like their weapons are more fun to play with than the British or Americans. Also, the factions you can choose depend on which map you play on, which I also kinda like. It forces you to try new factions and new weapons to play with. If you play on a North African map, you have to choose between British or Germans. On a Russian map, you have to choose between Russians or Germans. And on French maps, you have to choose between Americans or Germans. And it always has to be Axis versus Allies. You can't play British versus Americans, or Americans versus Russians, or British versus Russians. Although I do like the restrictions, and it keeps the game historically accurate even in multiplayer, I do wish there was a setting to turn that off. It would be cool to play a match of Russians versus Americans on a North African map. Also, even though there wasn't a Japanese or Italian campaign, I wish they had added Japan and Italy into the multiplayer. At least as allies, you can choose between playing as the British, Americans, and Russians, but as Axis, you're always stuck with the Germans. A little more variety would have been nice. Anyways, that's all for the video. Thank you for watching. Moltok, out.